Welcome, brothers and sisters. I'm Groovy Kim. This is the Groove Beyond podcast, and it's our second ever episode. I'm so glad you could join us. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite new topics, astrology. The reason why I say new is because I really didn't give it much credence in the first part of my life. And it hasn't been until recent years that I've actually looked into it and took it seriously. And now I have my co host partner, Nikko, who actually studies this all the time, and he's much better at it than I. And I would just love to have him help me explain astrology and what that means to us in our lives. Nikko, won't you please join us? Oh, I just love that hand symbol he has with the all seeing eye. Too cool. Your symbol is
What's
very
going on?
cool. I was just explaining that I love your symbol. It's extremely groovy. So yeah, I'm glad you're here. I want to explain just the basics about astrology because I don't know about others out there, but I suspect there's a lot of people like me who are very interested in it, but really don't understand it at all. I mean, we grew up with horoscopes in the newspaper, but that's about the extent of it as far as our knowledge went, at least mine. So I'm really interested in it. And exactly, I understand we have a birth chart, but that's about it. I know that my sign is Aries, and I know that your sign is Libra, but that's about it. And I heard that we just entered Virgo, but I'm not really
Yes.
sure what that means. Can you explain what the zodiac means and when we enter into one? There's 12, first of all, right? 12 zodiac
Yeah.
signs. Like there's 12 months in the year, but they don't match up, right? The dates of the
No, they
months don't
don't.
match the zodiac. Yeah, so
Um, but
kind of
they are about
confusing.
1 month long. And when we're talking about that zodiac, um, we're talking about the sun and its sign because when we're talking about astrology, every single planet, and in this case, when we're talking astrology, the sun and the moon are both considered planets. They were in antiquity times, so we just use the term planet still. The sun has moved into Virgo. And so all the planets are in different positions at the time, but the sun is the most predominant feature, which makes sense considering it's quite literally the center of the solar system.
It
So,
has literally the most gravitational pull of anything in our solar system as well. So it would be the
yes.
most influential physically.
And so when you say your sign, what you mean to say is your sun sign, where the sun
Oh,
was, where the sun was when you were born.
I
And
see.
at the current time,
Literally where it was in the sky at the time of your birth.
mhm.
I see.
And not to be confused, because, it might seem as though the sun travels across the sky, but that's not the case. We are moving, and the sun, or I mean, the Earth rotates, and the
Right.
sun is relatively stationary. It's not actually stationary. I mean,
Right.
there's a grander scale of that, but
Sure.
for simplicity's sake, the sun, as we rotate around it, where we're at, it changes position with the zodiac constellations behind it. Not to be confused, because the constellations are not the zodiacs. The constellations are more like reference points as we divide the sky up into 12 different sections. So,
Oh, that makes more sense because I was always confused about zodiacs and constellations. They don't always seem to pair up when you look at a chart.
they're not the same thing. The
Yeah.
constellation, well, the zodiacs are, I believe, named after the constellation. It's one of the two, but it doesn't really matter. because the zodiac is just the reference point. I mean, the constellation is the reference point in the general area of the sky as we divide it up. So
So
try
it's
to
almost like the
picture,
ancients used the constellations literally as just a way to point things out and say, see, if you see this picture, that means that's relatively where these heavenly
yeah,
bodies are located.
yes, because the constellations and the zodiac in this case, they don't ever move. They're stationary pretty much relative to where we're at. We are
Yeah,
constantly moving, and all the planets orbiting the sun and everything in this constant motion, they're moving. So where they're at in the zodiac wheel slowly shifts over time depending on what planet it is. And in the case of the sun, it's about every 30 days it transits or switches into a new sign, shifts into a new sign.
yeah.
And so in
You
this
know what I
case,
found to be really, really helpful to give a really good visual of how this works is to download a free app that shows you the stars in the sky. And I know you and I practice with ours all the time. I personally have one I've been using for years. It's totally free. There's a whole lot of them out there that aren't free, so you got to watch it. But yeah, you
mm-hmm,
can download them, and mine is called Stellarium. I have no affiliation with them. It's just a freebie one I found in the Play Store, and for Android. And anyway, you just hold it like this and just shift it around, and it literally will show you all of the constellations where they are at in real time, and
mm-hmm.
day or night. It doesn't have to be nighttime. You can use it at any time. It's just amazing how we have
and
these apps now. But that can really
and
give
when
you a
you
visual and let you
yes,
understand how they're all situated.
and when you look at something like that, you'll realize in more of a visual way, our solar system is kind of in this disk. So we're kind of in a flat plane, and the zodiacs are in a ring around this flat plane. So as the planets move across this ring, they shift across those 12 sections, the
And
12
and
zodiacs.
thus the zodiac wheel that we're all used to
Yes.
seeing. That's like a
And
flat
so
2D representation of what
mhm.
you're talking about, right?
And since it takes us 1 year, 365-ish days to orbit around the sun, it would make sense that it takes about 1 month for the sun to move one sign because
Oh,
that's
okay.
12. Yes. And
Okay.
depending on what planet it is, they're going to be at different speeds. So if it's a very far out planet like Neptune that orbits at a super slow pace, it's going to be in a sign for a long time. And if it's something that orbits very quickly, that's very close to the sun, like Mercury, for example, it's going to be shifting signs at a much faster pace. So it's it's a
Right.
lot of it's a lot of interchanging stuff. But for the sun, at least, yes, we've just shifted into Virgo, which that occurred on August 23rd. At the time of this video, we are on the 26th, so we're still relatively new into the sign, and so we'll shift out of Virgo into Libra on September 22nd.
I
Uh,
see.
yeah.
And okay, so everybody, I think, pretty much knows their own birth sign. And maybe the common things that are associated with it. For example, my sign is Aries, and I know that that means headstrong and kind of takes initiative, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Type A personality might be another thing you could throw in there. All kinds of ways to describe it, but you get the picture. Oftentimes people will tell me that that's probably why you were able to heal yourself, was because you had that personality type. And I believe that to be somewhat true. but it doesn't mean that you have to be an Aries in order to create and do things miraculously,
No.
quote unquote, you know. So it's just kind of a guideline, right? Of because when they say that your sign has certain personality traits, that doesn't mean it's set in stone for you. Because how could
No.
everybody who was born under that same birth sign have the same personality? It doesn't make sense to
Well,
me.
it's sort of that misconception a lot of times too, because there's way more to it than just your sun sign or just your sign. Because you got to take into account, you know, where was the moon at? Where was all the other planets at? They play other important roles
So many
in,
variables.
yes. So of
And
course it's not going to be
isn't it
just
true that
the
it's
same.
not just your birthday, but it's also your birth time? Because things are moving around so fast
That, yes, that does
up in
play a very
space
important role.
that the time is actually a factor as well. And I don't know,
And
I don't
the
know that most people
location of
know
where you
what
were born
time they were
too.
born. I'm sorry, what?
The location of where you were born also
Ah,
plays a role.
location. So time, date, and location.
Yeah, because
So
if you were, let's say New York compared to London, that same time on that same day, the sky is not going to be exactly the same. It's
that's
going to be
okay. So
slightly
that
different.
makes more sense. So the sky is just as individual as you are. So that
Yes,
makes more
it
sense.
by
And
technicality, it's literally different by the
by the
millisecond, but
millisecond, like it's never the same twice, right?
no.
Technically. Same as human beings, never the same twice. There's no two born this exactly the same ever.
And I
Uh,
see it more as these things are not set in stone like this is your
yeah, that's what
personality,
I was saying.
this is that. It's more of a general guide of how energy will be flowing, how energy will be, I guess,
Like
received
tendencies.
and yes, and expressions of
Yeah,
energy.
like it would
And
tend
so,
to go that
however,
way.
so according to, or I mean, just by environmental factors and other people around you, how that energy is played out, it could be taken and interpreted in many different ways. And so it's hard to really have, I don't believe in that there's really set in stone destinies with it. It's more just of a general guide.
That's where free
Like this
will
is,
comes in, huh? Because you always have
yes,
free will, and if you already know that you may have a tendency towards being headstrong, you can be aware of that and work on that, for example.
and if you really dove deep and started to see some upcoming things like, hey, I might experience some sort of career blockages possibly in the future. You might be able to know that and navigate around that.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, oh man, I'm just doomed.
I'm an Aries,
Like
so I'm always going to be headstrong and,
it's the same
like a ram,
it's the
but my
same
head
thing.
on everything.
I mean, it's the same thing if you knew a flood was coming. You don't just sit there and be like, well, gee,
Well, it
I
was
guess I just have
prophesized.
to, yeah,
Let's
I
not
just
build
have
a
to,
dam or a boat or go away. Well, yeah, it's just prophesized, so we have to take it. No,
in
that's where
fact,
free will comes in, right? It's just a roadmap to kind
it's
of show
simply
you.
it's simply a tool to see how energy is expressed.
Right.
That's how I view it.
Now, here's the other thing because I'm a scientist at heart.
Well, I am too.
Scientific, yeah, this is all esoteric, and you can't necessarily measure any of this with science as far as astrology goes, but can you? Maybe you can. And to me, it all comes down to this brand new science, although it's not brand new, kind of is to the public, I guess, quantum physics. And if you think about everything being a vibration, including every single planet in our solar system, obviously in the universe, but that directly affects us, it's amazing because we are vibration as well. And there's tug and pull, so to speak, like gravity
There's
itself. So it
there's
does
certain
affect you.
things.
I was just going to say quickly that we know that the moon has tremendous influence over women's bodies. You know, look at our menstrual cycles. So this isn't mythology, although we kind of treated it as such here in the West. We're starting to understand that maybe there's more to this than we realize because, after all, these bodies in space affect our bodies here on Earth way more than we realize. And other people, I guess, realize this. Maybe it's me that didn't realize. Not taking astrology seriously. Now, I still believe there's some quote unquote quacks out there that just want your money for this kind of thing because they tell you what you want to hear and that kind of thing. But I suppose that exists in virtually any profession.
Any profession.
Any profession. So you just have to educate yourself. And that's what I want to do here on this podcast is educate our listeners so that they can kind of understand what it is and what it isn't. So Virgo, we're coming into Virgo. So what does that mean?
I had a thought about that.
Yeah.
There was something I was going to explain. I totally lost it now.
Oh, sorry. If it comes back.
If it
let me
comes back,
know.
then that's okay. So for Virgo, at least, you were saying that you were an Aries, and that's that headstrong thing. There's an elemental factor to it. I'm sure that pretty much everybody's heard of the 4 elements: fire, air, earth, water.
Mm-hmm.
Aries is a fire sign.
Mm-hmm.
And so that headstrong, that high energy, that driving force, that's all very fire-esque in it. And
get her done.
Virgo, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the
That's me. I always want to do, go, get it done. Figure it out.
Virgo, on the other hand, is an earth sign. And what earth really is more of a grounded, down to earth sort of it can be traditional, very systematic, logical and reasoning.
Rooted?
Yes, rooted.
Rooted.
That can lead to
would
things
it be
as though, like,
yeah, set in your ways maybe?
It can be. It could be stubbornness or just, stuck in tradition. But it could also be valuing and respecting tradition.
Very
and,
important.
Things like discipline and, law and those things like that are very earthly, grounded, elemental aspects.
Keeps you safe as well.
Well, yes. I mean, we live, as far as I know, in the material world, and so we kind of have to deal with the earth aspect of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just reality.
It's important to stay grounded. Yeah.
Yes. All 4 elements are driving factors in our life.
Sure. You can't separate them. They all work together.
The earth element is one of the most obvious ones. You can literally see it everywhere.
It's right here, yeah.
Yeah. But for Virgo, it being an earth sign, it does stay true to those earthly measures. It's a very analytical sign. It likes organization. That sort of energy. Although I've read some things that can lead to perfectionism as well in certain cases. So
which could serve you or not. If
it's just how the energy plays.
Right. Yeah. It's, again, your free will. You could take that tendency in your sign to help you be really organized and efficient, or it could become a source of the other end of the spectrum where it's almost too much, like OCD, like you're overdoing it and now you're causing anxiety. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance, right?
That could lead to being too critical to maybe yourself or maybe to others.
Perfectionism.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that whole sort of thing.
Hmm.
But that in itself, to me, is kind of an earth element. I suppose any of the elements could express it, but I feel like it's more grounded in an earth
Hmm.
aspect of that.
Okay, so Virgo, the sign for Virgo. Well, wait a minute. First of all, the name Virgo. Can you explain a little bit about that? I know it's virgin, right? Kind of stands for.
Uh, yes, in Latin it means virgin, and it kind of originates from the Greek and Roman times too, which the Romans they spoke Latin, so it makes sense.
Hmm.
But the Virgo is associated with harvest too, and sort of wheat,
Oh,
like
well, it
harvest of
is
wheat and
that
all that.
time, autumn, right? Fall, the end of summer, when you're going to be
Hmm.
reaping what you sow.
And there's the goddess Demeter in the Greek and Roman mythology that was the goddess of harvest. And
Ah,
there's another one,
Demeter. I think I've.
or yeah, yeah, I read a little bit about that. And so there's a whole, actually, in the ancient zodiac, Virgo was the first sign.
Oh,
And I kind of see, yes, and I can see that as because it's the beginnings of harvest,
I
yielding the
think, you
crops.
know what? I think the Druids. Wait a minute, maybe I'm wrong. I was going to say, didn't the ancient Druids kind of consider the end of the year like their festival time too? Like it's, I don't know if I would say the beginning, but it was almost in some ways more important than spring, for example, just because that's when the harvest was. You
It
reaped
kind
everything
of
you just did for
depends.
the whole year, you know?
It depends on where you look, because some will say that, Aries is the first zodiac, which
Yeah.
currently it's considered the first zodiac.
We're
The
number one.
spring equinox. Yeah, this spring equinox, the start of, the beginning and all that. In antiquity, they deemed winter as kind of just a nothing a nothing
I know.
time,
I was
nothing
surprised
burger.
to learn that they actually didn't even name the season back in really ancient
No,
times.
there used to be 10 months because they considered winter to be a monthless season.
A monthless season. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Like it was nothingness, the blackness, the void. They didn't start labeling things again until spring. That's just
No,
amazing.
January and February were later added
Hmm.
because you can kind of see it in how the months are named. September, sept as in seven, October, oct as in eight, November, December, 9, 10. So December being the 10th months. And then January and February was just a monthless nothing period. And then the
So that
start
was
of the
added
season,
later.
yes.
I
And the
see.
start, March, which means month of Mars, the ruler of Aries, and that's when Aries begins too, was the start of the zodiac, the spring equinox. That was the
Now
start of
that
the
clears
year.
up some things why that's the start. I see. Thank you for that.
But
So,
you read some
okay,
other things, and I've seen in other antiquity that Virgo is considered to be the start, and that Leo, the sign right before Virgo,
so I guess
was
it
the end.
depends on the area of the world. Some people consider.
Their interpretation, because I'm thinking just because of the yielding of the crop,
That's what I was
so it
thinking.
was the
Yeah.
start.
Interesting. Okay, so we are at the end of August, about to get into September. Virgo we just entered the sign, the
Mm-hmm.
zodiac sign of Virgo. And so,
Meaning the sun is in Virgo now.
okay, so literally, if I was to hold up my app on my phone, I would see that the sun is in the sign of Virgo on the constellation.
Well, you have to remember the zodiacs and the constellations are not the same.
Ah,
It will
that's
be
hard to keep in mind.
if
Yeah.
if you look at your phone and try not to actually look at the sun, but
Yeah,
if you yeah
not advised.
if you're pointing, unless you know how to sun gaze, but that's a whole nother thing. Um, if you point your phone and look at where the sun is, it might be relatively in the constellation of Virgo, but it's not going to be exact because the constellations are not perfectly divided into the 12
Again,
sections.
just a reference point. That's all a
Yes.
constellation is. It's not exact. That was just ancient man's way of saying, look at that picture over there. It's in that area. Am I
Yeah, it's in
right?
that general spot.
I see.
But this is the official chart.
And then
This
the
is
other
where
thing of,
that's the energy.
having whole pictures up there that clearly I do not see. I can see the Big Dipper, but they've got some of these
Which was
complicated
later
pictures
named.
in the constellations, complicated
don't
ones
know.
that you can't make out with your eyes. I don't know who decided all that. It's just bizarre to me.
I don't
Like Virgo,
personally
what's
see
the
them either.
picture? What the picture of Virgo? The symbol,
Virgo is, well, if you're talking about the symbol itself, it
both.
kind of looks like a M with a little loop in
Let's
it.
put that
In
picture
fact,
up, shall we?
I can
There we go.
also
Okay, now, so that's the symbol. And then
yes,
the picture
and
for Virgo, is it a
it's
picture of
the
a virgin or what is it? I don't remember.
it's typically depicted as like a young female,
Like a maiden.
a virgin, yeah,
Yeah.
a maiden of some kind.
But the constellation Virgo, isn't that a normal picture that you always see? I mean,
If you're talking the actual constellation,
yeah.
doesn't look like a woman at all. It doesn't really look like any of that. But
So you'd almost have to have an app to find that in the sky. You can't just see it with
unless
your
you
naked eyes.
well, you can if you knew what the constellation looked like, but I'm just saying that depictions of what Virgo is and the actual symbol or the written symbol, it doesn't look like the constellation at all. And this is more further solidification that the zodiac and the constellation are kind of different. They're similar. That's where it is in the sky generally and relatively, but they're not the same thing.
Okay,
Uh,
got it. So now back to Virgo and what that means that we are in Virgo now. So, because it doesn't just affect people who have birthdays right now, right? It affects
no,
everyone that we are in
yes.
Virgo, right?
If
So, what does
you're
it
on
mean?
planet Earth, it is affecting you
I think most of us
subtly
are.
or
Okay,
maybe
there's
more
people
than
at the space
subtly.
station. What about them? Sorry, I couldn't
Honestly,
help it.
I can't say for certain. I'm sure that there is some sort of effect, but I really don't know, and I don't know how much study has been done on that because not very many people go to space and not very often.
I'm
So
sure it doesn't change your birth sign or anything. I'm sure it stays the
no,
same.
that doesn't change. I don't think you can do anything to change your birthday. So
But overall, for us all that we've entered into the sign of Virgo now, it
that
means
means that the sun and that's energy and what the sun means is going to be expressing that Virgo energy.
which is
And
being
so if
grounded, organized,
yes,
and what else? I was trying to remember.
it's grounded, organized, um,
Sensible, traditional.
analytical. Well, it can be, but it's more just I like to think of it more as it's analytical and more like that sort of an intellectual groundedness going on. Like if you were if you were doing something like being an accountant or a lawyer, that sort of energy would be a good example of what Virgo type energy might be. You're dealing with very down to earth, practical things
So it's a
in
good time
systematic ways.
to get organized, and it'd be a good time for
Yeah, it
that.
could be. Yes.
Or the opposite, if you're already doing that and you're way too OCD, it's a good time to pay attention to it and maybe slow down a little, huh?
And if you want to dive deeper and look at some of the other planets and where they're at, those will have an effect as well in your whole chart. But it's a rabbit hole that goes very deep, and I don't think we really got time for that.
Not
So
today, but thank you so much about your thoughts on Virgo. And I really appreciate you joining me again on this second ever episode of Groove Beyond because,
you could talk about this forever, and it's
and
not
I
like
plan on
going to
it.
stop
This and,
anytime soon.
yeah, this and many other subjects. We're going to be doing one upcoming in the not too distant future about crystals. So you'll want to be sure and hit the bell icon so that you get notified when we upload that. And we're going to try to have some other guests on as well. So, yeah, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much.
What if I
And
told you the Earth is a giant crystal?
the Earth is a giant crystal. Isn't that amazing, folks? Talk about
So
vibration
maybe
and
there's something even more deeper about this astrology.
yeah, and it's deeper than you know. So stay tuned. You know what? Because going to a groove beyond is really groovy. Thank you.